Okay, class, today we're going to be talking about economies of scale and market structures. So, first off, economies of scale mean either that larger firms or a larger industry would be more efficient. External economies of scale occur when cost per unit of output depends upon the size of the industry. Internal economies of scale are when it depends on the size of a firm. Both of these are important causes of international trade. They have different implications for the structure of industries. An industry where economies of scale are purely external consists mainly of small firms and be perfectly competitive. Internal economies of scale result when large firms have a cost advantage over small firms, causing the industry to become imperfectly competitive. This chapter deals with a model of external economies. The next chapter will cover internal economies. There's many modern examples of this that have powerful external economies. In the United States, there's a semiconductor industry, there's investment banking, and the entertainment, and all of these industries are relatively regionally focused. In developing countries, external economies are pervasive in manufacturing. For example, one town in China produces most of the world's underwear, another nearly all cigarette lighters. External economies played a key role in India's emergence as a major exporter of information services. For a variety of reasons, concentrating production of an industry in one or few locations can reduce the costs, even if individual firms remain small. There's a few reasons for this. One is specialized equipment or services. For example, in Silicon Valley, there's a large concentration of silicon chip companies which are serviced by companies that make the special machines. Two, there's a concept called labor pooling, where a large concentrated industry attracts a pool of workers, reducing search and hiring costs. There's knowledge spillovers. Workers from different firms easily share ideas. So we have a theory of external economies. We represent external economies simply by assuming that the larger the industry, the lower the costs. There's a forward falling supply curve. The larger the output, the lower the price at which firms are willing to sell. Without international trade, the unusual slope of the supply curve doesn't matter much. So here's that curve. So let's talk about international trade. Prior to trade, equilibrium prices and output for each country would be at the point where domestic supply intersects domestic demand. Suppose Chinese button prices in the absence of trade would be lower than US button prices. You can see that here graphically. What will happen when the countries open up the potential for trade? The Chinese button industry will expand because it's cheaper, while the US button will contract because it's less efficient. This process feeds on itself. As Chinese industry output rises, its costs will fall further. As output falls in the US, those costs will rise. In the end, all button production will be in China. A really good modern day example of this is in zippers. Virtually all zippers are produced by one company called YKK, which is housed in a small town in Japan. They have an economies of scale and are able to take advantage of this. So how does the concentration of production affect prices? Chinese button prices were lower before trade. Because the supply curve is forward falling, increased production as a result of trade leads to the button price that is lower than the price before trade. Trade leads to prices that are lower than the prices in either country before trade. This is very different from the implications of models without increasing returns. In the standard trade model, relative prices converge. If cloth is relatively cheap in a home country and relatively expensive in the foreign country, Before trade opens, the effect of trade was to raise cloth prices in home and reduce them in foreign. With external economies by contracts, the effect of trade is to reduce prices everywhere. And here you can see that graphically. So what might cause one country to have an initial advantage from having a lower price? One possibility is comparative advantage. If external economies exist, the pattern of trade could be due to historical accidents. So countries that start as large producers in certain industries tend to remain large producers even if another country could potentially produce more cheaply. This is that first mover advantage. So, a tufted blanket crafted as a wedding gift by a 19th century teenager gave rise to the cluster of carpet manufacturers around Dalton, Georgia. Silicon Valley may owe its existence to two Stanford graduates, Hewlett and Packard, who started a business in a garage there. Assume that the Vietnamese cost curve lies below the Chinese curve because Vietnamese wages are lower than Chinese wages. At any given level of production, Vietnam could manufacture buttons more cheaply. One might hope that this would always imply that Vietnam will be the supplier of the world market. But this need not always be the case if China has enough of a head start. There is no guarantee that the right country will produce a good that is subject to external economies. So trade based on external economies has an ambiguous effect on national welfare. There will be gains to the world economy by concentrating production of industries with external economies. It's possible that a country is worse off with trade than it would have been without trade. A country may be better off if it produces everything for a domestic market rather than pay for imports. Imagine that Thailand could make watches more cheaply, but Switzerland got there first. The price of watches could be lower in Thailand with no trade. Trade could make Thailand worse off, creating an incentive to protect its potential watch industry from foreign competition. What if Thailand reverts to autarky? It's still to the benefit of the world economy to take advantages of the gains from concentrating industries. Each country wants to reap the benefits of housing an industry with economies of scale. This creates trade conflicts. Overall, it's better for the world that each industry with external economies be concentrated somewhere. So we have dynamic increasing returns. So far, we've considered cases where external economies depend on the output of current output at a point in time. But external economies also depend on cumulative output over time, which results in dynamic increasing returns to scale. These exist if average costs fall as cumulative output over time rises. These could arise if the cost of production depends on the accumulation of knowledge and experience. A graphical analysis of this is called a learning curve. Like external economies of scale at a point in time, increasing returns to scale can lock in an initial advantage or a head start in an industry. These can also be used to justify protectionism, however. Temporary protection of industries enables them to gain experience. This is called the infant industry argument. Temporary is often for a long time, though. It is hard to identify when external economies of scale really exist. So now we move on to economic geography and international trade. External economies may also be important for interregional trade within a country. Many movie producers are located in LA, produce movies for consumers throughout the US. Most financial firms are located in New York, but provide for the entire country. Some non-tradable goods like vet services must usually be supplied locally. If external economies exist, the pattern of trade may be due to historical accidents. Regions that start as large producers in certain industries tend to remain large producers. So here we have examples of tradable industries versus non-tradable industries. Economic geography refers to the study of international trade and the organization of economic activity in metropolitan and rural areas. It studies how humans transact with each other across space. Communication changes such as internet, email, mobile phones are changing how humans transact with each other across space.